He gave his last $10 to a biker and woke up to find 300 Hells Angels outside his home. But what they came for? Nobody could have imagined. It was past midnight. Rain tapped softly against the windows of a lonely roadside diner on the edge of Los Angeles. The world was asleep, except for one man quietly sipping a cup of black coffee at the corner table. Keanu Reeves, no cameras, no bodyguards. Just a tired man wearing an old leather jacket, the same one he'd worn for years, worn not by fame but by stories. He had just finished a long shoot, his wallet thin, only a $10 bill left inside. For most people, that's nothing. But for Keanu, it was enough. Enough to buy a quiet moment, a cup of coffee, and peace away from the noise of Hollywood. Then, the door swung open. The sound of engines outside thundered like a storm. Hell's Angels bikers walked in, their leather jackets dripping rain, their presence heavy. The diner fell silent. Even the waitress stopped mid-step, eyes darting nervously. One of the bikers, tall, rough, his beard wet from the rain, searched his pockets at the counter. Nothing. He couldn't pay for his meal. The others laughed, teasing him. The waitress frowned. The biker's face dropped, part anger, part shame, and then, quietly, Keanu stood up. No one noticed at first. He walked to the counter, slow and calm, like a man who had nothing to prove. He took out his wallet, unfolded it, and placed his last $10 on the counter beside the biker. "It's not much," he said softly, "but maybe it helps." The diner froze. The waitress looked confused. The bikers stared, and was this a joke? No, the look in Keanu's eyes wasn't pity. It was respect. Without another word, he smiled, nodded once, and walked back to his seat. He didn't wait for thanks. Didn't need it. He finished his coffee, left a quiet tip, and walked out into the rain. That night, he gave his last $10 away, and unknowingly set a miracle in motion. They thought it was just $10, but to one man, it meant dignity. To another, it meant destiny. The diner door closed behind Keanu, bells chiming faintly as he stepped out into the cold rain. Inside, silence still hung heavy. The biker he had just helped sat frozen, staring at the $10 bill lying under his trembling hand. Nobody spoke for a moment. Even the laughter of his friends faded into uneasy quiet. He looked toward the door where Keanu had just disappeared into the storm. Something shifted inside him. Not pride, not anger, but something raw, something human. Who the hell was that guy? One of the bikers muttered. The man didn't answer. He just picked up the $10 bill and folded it slowly, and put it in his jacket like it was something sacred. Outside, rain fell harder. Keanu zipped up his old jacket, pulled his helmet over his head, and started his bike. The engine coughed once, then came alive, a humble growl against the thunder. He rode away, his headlight cutting through the fog, the world behind him fading like a memory. He didn't look back. He never did, because to him, kindness wasn't a transaction. It was a way of living. Back inside the diner, the biker finally spoke, his voice quieter than anyone had ever heard it. "You guys laugh too much," he said. His friends turned toward him, surprised. He looked down at his worn hands, hands that had built engines, fought battles, done things he wasn't proud of, and whispered, "No one ever looked at me like that guy did." Like I was worth something. The others didn't know what to say. This man, the one they all feared and followed, was reflecting because of a stranger's $10 bill. Outside, the rain washed the streets clean. Inside, something was being cleaned too, a man's heart. Hours passed. The night gave way to a gray dawn. The biker sat alone on his bike in the empty parking lot, the folded bill still in his hand. He kept staring at it, thinking about the quiet man with gentle eyes who'd walked away without expecting thanks. Then he started his engine. Not to ride for trouble, not to run, but to repay a moment that had changed him. He drove to a small motel near the hills where his brothers stayed. When they woke, he told them everything. Not about fame, not about money, and about respect. About a man who didn't judge, didn't mock, didn't care who you were. They listened. And one of them asked, "So what do we do?" The man smiled faintly, eyes still fixed on that folded note in his palm. "We show him what brotherhood really means." That night, 300 phones rang across the biker network. Messages spread faster than engines roar. "Tomorrow morning, Beverly Hills. We ride for the man who gave his last 10. The brotherhood assembled like thunderclouds. Engines polished. Jackets ready. No weapons. No grudges. Just respect, and at the center of it all, the biker from the diner holding that small crumpled bill like a holy token. He thought it was over when he gave his last $10 away. But for the Hells Angels, that was where it began. As dawn approached, the city slept peacefully, unaware that in just a few hours, the sound of 300 roaring engines would echo through its quiet streets, headed straight for the home of the man who never expected anything in return. He gave his last $10 to a stranger and woke up to find 300 Hells Angels outside his door. But what they came for, what it wasn't revenge, it was 6:03 a.m. The sun had barely started to rise over Beverly Hills. Sleepy calm floated in the air, the kind of silence that exists right before something unbelievable happens. Inside a modest two-story house on the corner of Crescent Drive, Keanu Reeves was still half asleep. No bodyguards, no alarms, just him, a cup of cold coffee on the bedside table and a half-finished book lying open beside him. Then it began, a faint vibration. The windows rattled. A low, distant rumble grew louder, deeper, heavier. At first, Keanu thought it was thunder, but the sound didn't fade. It multiplied. It was rhythmic, mechanical. Engines. He got up, walked to the window, and froze. Down the street, the entire block shimmered under the rising sun. And there, lined in perfect formation, were hundreds of bikers. Rows upon rows of motorcycles stretched from one end of the street to the other. Chrome glistened like fire. Black leather gleamed with patches that read, "Hells Angels." The rumble was now deafening, a chorus of roaring engines shaking the morning stillness. Keanu blinked, unsure if he was still dreaming. He stepped outside, barefoot, coffee mug still in hand. The sound of 300 engines instantly quieted, all at once. Silence dropped like a curtain. The neighbors peeked through curtains. A few joggers stopped filming with their phones. Police cars idled at the far corner, watching cautiously but not moving closer. At the center of the formation, one man stepped forward, the same biker from the diner. Cleaned up now, jacket zipped, his face calm but filled with purpose. Keanu squinted slightly, still piecing it together. Then he saw it, something small, glinting in the man's hand. It was that folded $10 bill. The biker raised it slightly and said, his voice echoing through the quiet street, "You gave this to me when I couldn't even feed myself. You didn't ask who I was. You didn't care what patch I wore. You just saw a man and helped." Keanu stayed silent, eyes soft, heart heavy. The biker continued, voice trembling slightly. "We came to return that respect. You gave one of us dignity. Today 300 brothers ride for you." A deep wave of emotion filled the air. It wasn't anger. It wasn't chaos. It was loyalty, pure and raw. Keanu set his coffee cup down on the porch railing and stepped closer. No fear, no confusion, just quiet understanding. He looked at the faces around him, rough, scarred, tattooed, yet every one of them looked back with respect. The leader extended his hand. Keanu shook it firmly. And in that handshake, no cameras, no contracts, no words, a silent pact of humanity was made. Behind the biker, another group stepped forward carrying a long envelope. The leader handed it to Keanu. Inside was a letter, handwritten, signed by every single biker present. "You gave your last 10, so we give you our respect, our loyalty, and our promise. The road remembers kindness, brother." Keanu folded the note carefully, smiled faintly, and said only one line. "You didn't have to do any of this." The biker smiled back, shaking his head. "That's the point, brother. Neither did you." The engine started again, but this time the roar wasn't wild. It was proud, united, powerful. As they revved together, the sound wasn't noise anymore. It was a salute, 100 engines. One heartbeat. Neighbors came out, some clapping, some wiping tears. A few children waved from doorsteps. And Keanu just stood there, quiet, humbled, surrounded by the loudest silence he'd ever known. He gave his last $10 and received something the world can't buy, respect. He gave without expecting anything in return. But sometimes, the universe returns the favor in ways you can't imagine. The morning sun now shimmered across the line of chrome engines. 300 bikers stood still, black leather, steel, and silence. Keanu Reeves, barefoot on his porch, looked at them all, half in disbelief, half in awe. The air vibrated with quiet power. Every biker watched him, waiting, as if they'd all rehearsed this moment for days. Then, the same man from the diner, the one who had received that $10, took a slow step forward. His boots echoed against the street. He stopped a few feet from Keanu and removed his helmet. His eyes weren't wild anymore. They were calm, steady, almost grateful. "Mr. Reeves," he began, voice deep and clear. "You didn't just give me money that night. You gave me something I'd forgotten I had. Self-respect." Keanu smiled faintly but didn't interrupt. The man continued, louder this time, speaking not just to Keanu but to the whole world listening through the crowd gathering nearby. "People see our jackets and they think we're monsters. Maybe sometimes we've lived like that. But that night you saw something else. You saw a human being, hungry, lost, and instead of turning away, you reached out." His voice cracked slightly on the last words. The other bikers nodded silently, hands resting over their hearts. Then he pulled out that same folded $10 bill, now pressed inside a small plastic sleeve. He held it up toward the sunlight. "You gave your last 10. Today, 300 of us give something back. Not to repay you, but to honor what you reminded us of." He handed Keanu an envelope. The paper was heavy, worn from being passed hand to hand. Keanu opened it slowly. Inside were dozens of handwritten notes, each signed with grease-stained fingerprints and rough, honest words. "For the man who gave more than money. Respect costs nothing, thank you for proving it. You reminded us what brotherhood really means." Keanu's eyes shimmered. He looked up, speechless. He could only whisper, "You didn't have to do this." The biker smiled softly. "That's the point, brother. Neither did you." He motioned to the rest of his crew. Several bikers stepped forward, carrying a small black duffel bag. They placed it gently on the porch beside Keanu. "This," the leader said, "isn't money for you. It's something you inspired." Keanu knelt and unzipped the bag. Inside, stacks of envelopes, each one marked with the name of a charity, children's hospital or veteran shelter. Donations. "We raised it last night," the biker continued. "Each brother gave what he could. You showed us that even $10, when given with heart, can start a revolution." The street was silent. Even the police officers parked nearby stood quietly, heads bowed. Some neighbors began to clap. Others just watched in awe, tears in their eyes. Keanu stood slowly, holding the envelope close to his chest. He looked around at 300 men society feared, and saw something entirely different. Not outlaws, not rebels, brothers. He stepped closer to the leader and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You didn't need a reason to do this," Keanu said softly. "But you gave the world one, to believe in kindness again." The biker nodded once, trying to hide his emotions behind dark shades. "Kindness, brother," he said. "That's our new ride." A few of the bikers chuckled quietly. Others raised their helmets in salute. Then the leader reached into his jacket and pulled out something unexpected, a custom patch. It was black and silver, stitched carefully with 2 words in bold, "Honor Rider." "You're one of us now," he said. "Not because of fame, because of what's inside your heart." Keanu took the patch carefully. He didn't say a word. He just smiled, eyes wet, and whispered, "Thank you." Engines started again. The street thundered once more, not with chaos but with purpose. Each biker revved their engine once, a synchronized salute. Then, one by one, they began to roll out, slow, graceful, powerful. As they rode away, the leader turned his head one last time and shouted through the roar, "You gave us a reason to ride proud again." Keanu stood on his porch, watching the endless line of motorcycles fade into the morning horizon. The sound echoed like a heartbeat across the city. He gave his last $10 to a stranger, and the world answered with brotherhood. He gave $10 without expecting a return, and got a movement that inspired millions. The next morning, Los Angeles woke up to a sound it had never heard before. Not chaos, not sirens, but 300 roaring motorcycles moving in perfect harmony, led by Keanu Reeves, wearing a simple black jacket and a patch stitched on the back. Honor Rider. The sun rose behind them, golden rays slicing through morning mist, casting long shadows across the highway. Helmets gleamed. Flags fluttered. Every rider carried something symbolic, not weapons or chains, but envelopes of hope for hospitals, shelters, and orphanages. The convoy stretched for miles. Traffic stopped. People came out of their homes pulling out their phones but soon lowered them, because what they were seeing didn't feel like a movie. It felt holy. A little boy on the roadside held up a handmade sign, "Thank you, John Wick." The crowd laughed, but Keanu slowed his bike, removed his helmet, and smiled warmly. "Nobody," he said softly. "It's not John Wick today. It's just Keanu," the boy's mother whispered. "He looks like an angel on a bike." And in that moment, he did. As the riders crossed the downtown bridge, helicopters hovered overhead. News crews scrambled to capture the impossible sight. The Hells Angels riding not for dominance, but for compassion. Reporters shouted into their microphones. What started as a small act of kindness has now turned into the largest charitable biker convoy Los Angeles has ever seen. But for Keanu, the cameras didn't matter. His focus was on one destination, a children's cancer hospital in East LA. The same one his mother used to donate to quietly, decades ago. When they arrived, hundreds of children and nurses were already waiting outside, holding balloons and banners that read, "Welcome Honor Riders." The bikers parked their engines and removed their helmets in unison. The sound of silence that followed was breathtaking. Then the same biker from before, the man who once couldn't afford his meal, stepped forward holding a giant teddy bear. He knelt beside a little girl in a wheelchair and said, voice trembling, "This is from all of us, because you're stronger than we'll ever be." The little girl giggled, hugged the bear, and looked up at him. "Thank you, Mr. Biker." He smiled, the kind of smile that only comes after years of pain melting into purpose. Keanu walked into the hospital lobby with the donation envelopes. He didn't hand them to the media or to officials. He gave them directly to the nurses. "These are from the brothers," he said quietly. "No signatures, no PR, just love." One of the nurses, tears in her eyes, whispered, "You don't even know how many lives this will save." Keanu looked back at the bikers through the glass doors, standing tall, silent, respectful. "Maybe I do," he said. Outside, the bikers began lifting kids onto their bikes for small photo rides. The hospital courtyard turned into a festival of laughter and roaring engines. Even the most feared men in LA were now heroes in leather. One child, bald from chemo, asked Keanu shyly, "Mr. Keanu, can I sit on your bike?" He smiled, lifted the boy gently, and said, "Only if you promise to drive slow." The boy laughed, a pure, bright laugh that echoed across the parking lot. Cameras caught the moment. That single image, Keanu holding the sick child on his motorcycle, went viral within hours. By evening, the internet exploded. Honor Riders was trending globally. Celebrities shared the story. Fans around the world donated millions in 24 hours to children's hospitals, biker charities, and community funds. But Keanu didn't even check his phone. He was still at the hospital helping volunteers carry boxes of food and toys. A journalist finally reached him and asked, "How does it feel to start a global movement with just $10? Keanu paused, smiled faintly, and replied, "It wasn't the money. It was the message. That kindness doesn't need an audience, it just needs a heart." That night, as the convoy disbanded, the bikers gathered one last time. The leader raised his helmet toward the sky and said, "Brothers, today we didn't ride for pride. We rode for love, and that's the loudest roar of all." The engine started once more, thundering into the night, a symphony of redemption echoing through the streets. Keanu stood by his bike, watching them fade into the distance. A soft smile touched his face as he whispered to himself, "Maybe heaven really does ride on two wheels." He turned the key, revved his engine, and rode into the horizon. Not as a star, but as a man who proved that a single act of kindness can rewrite the world. He gave 10 and received an army of hearts. This was never about money, it was about humanity. A man gave his last $10. The world gave back something far greater, faith in humanity. A month later, the world had moved on, but something had shifted, quietly, deeply, as in people's hearts. They called it the $10 miracle. The story of Keanu Reeves and the Hells Angels had spread beyond borders. From Tokyo to Toronto, from Karachi to California, millions watched that viral footage of the ride of kindness. It wasn't just news. It was hope. At schools, teachers used the video to teach empathy. In churches and mosques, preachers spoke about selfless giving. Even prisoners in jails requested to watch the clip, saying it made them believe in second chances. But for Keanu Reeves, life hadn't changed much. He still rode the same bike, still stopped at the same quiet diner sometimes, still tipped waitresses with that humble, soft smile. Only now the world looked at him differently, not as a Hollywood hero, but as a human hero. One evening, he was sitting again in that same diner. The rain was falling just like that night weeks ago. The waitress, now a friend, came over smiling. "You know, ever since that night, we get bikers here every week," she said. "They come, they eat, and they always leave a note for the next stranger who needs it." Keanu looked up, a gentle warmth in his eyes. "That's beautiful," he said softly. "Kindness. It travels faster than any bike." The waitress chuckled. "You started something, you know?" "No," he replied, smiling faintly. "It started itself. I just didn't stop it." Outside the diner window, a young man was standing in the rain, leather jacket, helmet under his arm, watching Keanu silently. When Keanu stepped out to leave, the man approached him nervously. "Sir, are you Keanu Reeves?" "Sometimes," Keanu smiled. "Who's asking?" "My dad was one of those bikers. From that day. He passed away last week, but before he did, he told me to find you." Keanu's expression softened. He said, "Tell Keanu I rode proud because of him. Tell him. He made me believe a sinner could still do something good." The young man handed him a small item wrapped in a cloth. It was the Honor Rider patch, the same one his father had worn. "He wanted you to have it back." Keanu took it with trembling hands. The rain mixed with tears on his face. He pressed the patch to his heart. "Your father didn't just ride proud," he whispered. "He rode with purpose. That's how angels ride." Weeks later, Keanu quietly founded a new foundation, the Honor Ride Initiative, dedicated to helping struggling veterans, homeless bikers, and kids in need. He refused sponsorships or publicity. All he wanted was a ripple effect, and it worked. Every year, bikers around the world began organizing $10 rides and small charity rides inspired by that one night. No fame, no politics, just people helping people. News anchors called it the Keanu effect. But he didn't see it that way. To him, it was never about credit. During an interview, a journalist asked, "Do you realize that millions have donated because of you?" Keanu smiled quietly. "If they gave because of me, it'll fade. But if they gave because they felt, it'll last forever." That quote became legendary. It was printed on murals, tattooed on arms, written on walls. Give because you feel, not because they're watching. Years later, when the story resurfaced again online, a fan commented under the old footage, "The world didn't deserve a man like him." But someone replied beneath it, "No, he made the world deserve him." One sunset, Keanu stood at the same hill where the Honor Riders had gathered years ago. The wind brushed his hair, the sky painted gold. He held the old biker patch in his hand and whispered, "Maybe kindness isn't about changing the world. Maybe it's about reminding it what love looks like." He smiled, mounted his bike, and kicked the engine. The roar echoed softly through the valley, and not loud, not wild, just peaceful. As the sun dipped below the horizon, his silhouette disappeared into the orange glow. A lone rider carrying nothing but heart. He gave $10 once, but what he received was eternal. A brotherhood, a movement, a memory, and a world reminded that goodness still exists.